Great. So today we have Troy with us again to do a little legislative session update. So we'll get to that in just a second. And then we are going to look at the scope of work, some revisions that we're going to share with you, look at the timeline for deliverables, and then we're going to look at KPI and that funding and gonna have some conversation about that. Troy has to jump off really quick. So ELD staff, I'm gonna short you the opportunity to introduce yourselves, and we can do that in a second.
And just a welcome to Sue Miller, who's also joining us today.
Oh, great. Hi, Sue.
Hi. Nice to see you all again.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Glad you could join us.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, Troy, take it away. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Just a few things. Since the last time we chatted, a few bills have been heard that are not agency bills that, but are important to you folks nonetheless. The first is HB 3073. That's the governance bill. And I think that was heard last Monday of last week. My days and weeks are all mixed up these days. And 2503, that's the ERDC reform bill that Family Forward has put forth to restructure the program. 3073 in particular, there are some issues that arose during the committee hearing. Rep. Lively had some questions about whether the proposed early learning authority I guess pulls apart the education continuum that the agency in his eyes has with the Department of Education currently. But I think something that we need to reiterate is that the early learning division operates semi-autonomously from the department anyway, with its current governance structure. Another bill to put on your radar is SB 757. That is a committee bill from the Senate Human Services Committee. This bill came up in the short session in 2018, or excuse me, 2019. What am I saying? 2020. I'm going through all the years. And this bill is related to what's called conditional enrollment in the Central Background Registry. And what we mean by this is that when folks who are seeking enrollment for employment purposes or whatever the reason may be, oftentimes they get hung up on the out-of-state background check because as some of you may recall, there's a 5-year or the application request information on states that you may have lived in the past 5 years. And so oftentimes states, I think California won't even give us that info. And other states just drag their feet and take forever on getting that to us. And we found that there's little to no risk if we don't have that info, I guess, at the time of employment, because the federal FBI background check and the state background check sort of fills that gap. But anyway, so that bill isn't scheduled for a hearing yet, but you'll probably hear more about it either from me or in your travels. And then a couple of other bills that are up for hearings this week, SB 49 and SB 50. These are central background registry related bills as well. SB 49 is the bill that would be transferring the background check process for our license exempt child care providers who participate in the ERDC program. This would transfer the background check process from the background check unit at DHS over to the Office of Child Care at ELD. There's a -1 amendment that will be posted pretty soon on the committee website if you follow that. And that's more technical in nature to iron out some of the drafting errors when we receive the bill back from Legislative Council. And then the other bill, SB 50, is regarding the recorded programs. So it would require the staff and volunteers, the recorded programs, to enroll in the Central Background Registry as well. And I think I may have mentioned this when I chatted with you folks early on that there was a piece in that bill, or there is a piece in that bill regarding health and safety standards and giving the Early Learning Council rulemaking authority to implement some rules regarding health and safety inspections. That will be removed for this legislative session under a -1 amendment as well. And the reason for that is because the governor's budget didn't give us the FTE necessary to carry out health and safety inspections. So those are the highlights. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take a few. However, I have to jump off at around 1:30. Oh, I also should mention, I don't know how I forgot this, 2166, I looked at John's face and I remembered, 2166, that is the bill that the governor's office dropped regarding education equity. It's an omnibus bill, and the division has a piece in that bill as well regarding the early childhood suspension and expulsion prevention program. The program is sort of self-explanatory in the title, but what the aim is here is to provide technical assistance and professional development resources to providers to prevent suspension and expulsion. And then there's also some rulemaking authority that's granted to the ELC for defining terms like expulsion, because expulsion looks like many things. It can be soft expulsion where a provider says something to the effect of, I don't think your child is a good fit here. You may want to move them to another program. So things like that, we're going to lay out definitions for as we begin the process of hopefully standing up a program with the passage of this bill.
Troy, I had a question about that. Has the TA and professional development training for providers been fleshed out at all? I know that's maybe not a legislative question. I'm just curious in terms of what's the type of PD and training that providers can expect, because I'm hearing just pushback in my community from providers around that. So would love to be able to speak to it intelligently with them.
Yeah, so I don't have particular details on what the training would look like. However, I do have an idea of what the training is going to touch on, or not training, but the professional development and technical assistance. And so there would be a cadre of mental health consultants that the providers could tap into through a centralized sort of warm line. They could call this line and say, hey, this is an issue I'm having at my program. And then one of these mental health consultants would be dispatched to assist the provider with sort of mental health consultation, but particularly centered in racial equity. And that's about as much detail as I have right now, because I'm looking at this from more of a higher level policy area.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Ron may have any better insight on what that may look like on the ground.
Well, I think the bill is written in a way that gives us some flexibility to do some community, information gathering, stakeholder engagement, that kind of stuff before we really set a lot of those, standards for what the training might entail and that sort of thing. And the same thing goes for it. It was opened in a way as it relates to the mental health consultation that it's allowing us to also put together a process to create a model that's informed by current practices in communities, informed by serving children of color and doing it appropriately and with equity. And so that process is kind of going on parallel to this, but the bill has some flexibility in it, so it doesn't put us in a box to where we have to set it up in a very specific way, at least not currently, unless there's amendments that change that. But
Great, thanks. That's helpful.
And sorry, I was trying to message back Denise, but I accidentally messaged Carmen. Denise was asking about the KPI bill, I think 2054, HB 2054. That bill, along with 2053, which is the technical fixes to the community plans for the preschool promise and baby promise statutes, as well as the Tribal Hub Bill 2059, and then the Spark, 2055, and then the Spark technical fixes 2059. Those have been heard, and we're just waiting for a work session on those now. We'll be meeting with Rep. Power, the chair of the Early Childhood Committee, in the coming days to figure out what her plan is on those work sessions. Because I think that committee had somewhere around 15 to 20 bills, which isn't that many bills for a committee. So we're sort of in a holding pattern now to see what the work sessions look like. And for those who don't know, a work session is where the legislators, after they've heard a bill, get together to discuss moving the policy out of the committee onto the floor for a vote, and in this case, the House chamber. Sometimes bills do have referrals to other committees after, and usually those bills are related to revenue or they have a fiscal impact. So those bills would either be referred to revenue after, or they'd be referred to the Joint Ways and Means Committee. The bills that I just mentioned, the four, are fairly technical in nature. Have no impact on, or don't have a fiscal impact, except, pardon me, the tribal hub does have fiscal impact because we're making a limited duration position permanent. But anyway, so those bills would go to the floor of the House, except for 2055, the tribal hub, that would be referred to Ways and Means after. So that's where we are in the process with those. And it looks like Dorothy put in the chat the link to the presentation that Miriam gave on 2166. So, alrighty.
Any last questions before we let Troy get back to it? Thanks for your time, Troy. We really appreciate it and all your work. See you next month.
Alrighty, thanks for having me. Bye, folks.
Bye.
All right. Okay, sorry, we're gonna hop back to who's on our meeting today. Yeah, so again, Carmen Ellis with the ELD Early Learning Hub Manager. Niece, you want to say hi next, and then just round robin through all our ELD staff quickly.
Super. Hi, everybody. Denise Swanson, Early Learning Hub Manager. Nice to see you all. Happy almost spring. John? He's calling people.
Yeah. John Reeves, Community Systems Team Manager. Nice to see everyone. Go, Margie.
Hi, everyone. Margie McNabb, Higher Education Analyst in the Community Systems Team.
Andy? Still on mute?
The touchpad wasn't working. Sorry, Andy Bales-Molnar, Head Start Collab Director.
Thank you. Thank you. Cass?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Cass from the Community Systems Team. Welcome. And it is sunny in Salem. So,
yay. And
hi, good afternoon, everyone. And Coordinated Enrollment Manager.
all right, I'm just looking. Did I miss any other stuff?
I think we got us all.
Right. All right. All right. I guess we're good.
Great. Denise, will you start the slide share and I will jump in?
I knew I had a job I couldn't remember. Here we go.
All right. So everyone should have. Oh, great. Yeah. Gotten a new copy, a new draft of the scope of work. You'll notice it's, for one, quite a lot shorter than it was in the past. Just want to take time to thank everyone and recognize the time and effort that you've spent already in this feedback process with us. Denise and I hosted with our colleagues here 4 sessions of feedback with a variety of community members on the hub scope of work, and it was very informative. It was really, like, I would say, invaluable, honestly, to hear everyone's input and just to be able to think together about the work and how we move forward toward in our vision, as well as, and I think I said this in a couple of the sessions, but the conversation was really helpful in terms of looking at the scope of work and deliverables that go with that, but also in looking ahead at what comes next as we start implementing this scope of work and kinds of TA we need to, that we should expect, and helped us look at like our own capacity as a division and what we need to be preparing to do based on the feedback that we got from you and what kinds of supports you've asked for and able to carry out this work. So just really appreciate your candor and just the real thought that went into the feedback that we got. And also, it was really fun for us to be in a room with so many thoughtful people 4 days in a row to just to hear from everyone and their unique lenses on what's happening. It was really useful and just, it was really fun. We kind of left Friday on a really high note together, like, this was really a good week. So with that, I do want to just jump in. So today we're going to talk about the scope of work and the KPI funding. And we'll go over some of the major changes in a little bit more detail. So do the next slide, please, Denise. Thanks. So this is just a quick bulleted summary of changes that were made to the scope of work since the last time that you saw it last week. Again, we really worked on clarifying the language and tightening that up, taking out things that were redundant, moved the backbone information that you were seeing up into the purpose statement. Yeah, that really helped kind of clarify. There weren't really, it just helped to clarify the deliverables, I'll say that. And then we took out the comprehensive children's budget requirement, and Denise will talk more about that later, but we want to make sure that in going forward, that is really important to us, that all of the hubs have a clear sense of clear understanding, not a sense, a clear understanding and data about the investments, public and private, that are being made financially in their region. But looking at what that work actually entails to gather that, it was clear that some of that needed to really be coming from the ELD as well, and that just the scope of that project was something that we want to put out a little further in time, and make sure that we are partnering with you to do that as well, as opposed to, I think the way that it was written in there before was just something that we heard from you was not really realistic to put on your plate in terms of capacity to own that yourselves entirely. So more to come on that. And then we had some important updates to sector planning, strategic planning, and then the data that went with that, the requirements around that. Again, some places where really helpful talking with all of you and the other leaders that you work with in your hub about what's needed and what should be done, and really in partnership. So for example, the data requirements was a place where we talked with a couple of different feedback session groups about doing more of a work group to identify cross-state outcomes and measurements, and then working with the ELD data people to start gathering that. So, and we can talk more about that in the future as well. So next slide, please. I'm battling a very committed cat today, committed to laying in the middle of our meeting. So one of the things we wanted to just make sure that we talked about today, gave a very similar update to the CCR&R directors this morning, just keeping everyone on the same page about where we're going in terms of CCR&R and hub partnership and collaboration. Again, not big changes here in the language, other than really clarifying. So one of the words that we clarified here, you'll see, was assist, which we're finding more helpful than the word collaborate. We can all talk about that, but just wanting to make sure that it's clear in contract language that, we're, as we said in the feedback sessions, we're really, a lot of this work is work that you're already doing with the CCR&Rs. It's not necessarily new, but again, like we said before, it wasn't called out specifically. So this rewrite of the scope of work this time around in this biennium gave us a chance to make sure that it is clear and that we are highlighting, we are focused in on places where that collaboration has real potential to move the dial on that. And we'd let them know, like, where in the timeline your annual your work plans are and things like that. So, and in that conversation that we had, oh yeah, no, go ahead, Denise. Perfect. You read my mind. I did highlight this morning with the CCR&R directors, the collaboration between the hubs and the CCR&Rs that's already going on in so many places, but that we're really wanting to call the hubs into that more. We used to have, we have had the capacity building and workforce development in the CCR&R grants, but we're understanding now from conversation with them and from you and, you know, from our observations across the state that with Oregon being the childcare desert that it is, this is really much more of a cross-sector, multi-sector piece of work than just the CCR&Rs can carry out on their own by recruiting childcare providers and getting them through licensing and working on pathways and such. That's really important work, and that is those are both huge pieces of this, of building up our supply, but it's not going to be sufficient in itself. So this is where we're laying out the skills and strengths that you have in terms of being strategic conveners, building on the relationships that you have across the region, to really just make a more robust initiative and set of initiatives to achieve supply building. All right, Denise, you want to take over here?
Sure.
Thanks.
All right. I have not been monitoring the chat box.
Yeah, me neither. Let's see.
I was just answering the work plan question for CCR&Rs. Yes, they have work plans. They always have had work plans. Very similar process. As far as timelines go, we can cross-check that, but I do know that the CCR&Rs duration, their new contracts for 21-23 will start July 1st. So that is different than yours. Yours is October, correct?
Yes, October 1st.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So just a reminder, if people can mute, we're getting a little bit of feedback on the call. So one of the things that you didn't see before was what the deliverables timeline was. So we wanted to kind of get people's feeling on this. Carmen and I spent quite a bit of time really talking through from the feedback sessions and also how much time it would take for us to set up some of these pieces. And as you know, with procurement, I would like that if this would be more fluid, which we can do on our own, but contractually have to have deliverable dates in there, obviously. So as it says, October 1st is our start date. We assume that between now and then, although funding amounts are not absolute until the session is over, that folks are starting to think about the requirement to assure that you have the FTE in place and that you're thinking about what the staffing is. So we wanted to make that deliverable due the first after the first quarter, basically. So there's thought going on now and then the first quarter of the contract. And then the big first chunk of work, we know the foundational piece is doing the regional system assessment, whether that is you have to start fresh or there are people that already have a lot of this work done and will be updating to it, et cetera. But knowing that that's quite a chunk of work, we put that as a July 1st, 2022 deliverable date on that piece. And through that, we're going to be working alongside you with technical assistance, a toolkit, a template, what kind of things do we want to have in place, and what will meet the essence of what the regional assessment should look like. Then sector planning revisions and update, as we said, Carmen just noted before, we recognized that we had pulled over in the first iteration of the grant a lot of the old language from the past contract. So we really just shrunk this one down to say, you already have the sector plan. What we want is that you're going to do some updating and revisions to it. And so that would be then due 1 year from the start of the contract on October 1st, 2022, because that will happen, of course, after your regional system assessment. And then parent councils, again, there are those of you that have these in place. Some are going to be starting fresh. Some will be receiving a lot of TA on this. And so for that due date, we move that to January 1st of 2023. Before those are in place and really starting to meet and hopefully now reviewing your assessment and your sector planning piece, which then brings us into the strategic plan. So as Carmen noted earlier as well, we don't want people reinventing their whole strategic plan. We want you building on it to make sure that it aligns to the theory of change and Raise Up Oregon, as well as what you discover through your assessment and your planning piece. So your strategic plan, whether you're, again, wherever your starting point is, will be due February 1st of 2023. And then work plan updates and budget. We should have 2 dates in there, Carmen. So here's what we were thinking about the work plan, and we'd be interested in your feedback on this. So obviously there's going to be a plan to plan all this planning for all of you. So we're going to want to know what you're thinking about, how you're moving forward. It's how we track. Most of the deliverables are around the work plan, frankly, and the quarterly reporting. And right, so those will be lined up to each other. So our thought is, in the past, as you know, we had December 15th as the date. What we would propose would be a January 1st of 2022 start date for the initial work plan. Now, it won't be a big deal. It's just going to be, here's how we're going to approach the different pieces of work so that we know where you're at in the continuum. We have to hire a brand new staff because we only had 1 person. We don't have anything with the regional assessment. That's going to take us over this track of time, et cetera. So that'll be a fairly simplified document. And then our thought is that we would update that document again. It didn't seem quite right to do it a year out because you will still be, when you look at the other things with the strategic plan, which will be a big piece, of course, that will affect your work plan. We thought that March 15th made more sense for the second year work plan. And then hopefully as we're moving forward into the next biennium after this one in 23-25, these things now we're going to get on a flow because we'll have them set up. We'll be able to tinker around really over these next 2 years and work on that. So I don't know if anybody has a comment that they want to make or make in the chat box about just starting even with the work plan and then your overall perspective on the individuals.
Denise, I'm going to read you some questions from the chat box.
Yep.
So I think it'd be good to answer these and before questions about the order and such of the deliverables timeline. Is KPI and C coordinated enrollment included in this work plan? Or are the activities and deliverables in addition to this work plan?
Yeah. So I don't know if Carmen, your thing that's giving me the feedback that happened to us.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. So KPI it's going to be the way it's been in the past. So the KPI work plan will be a little different. It'll have its own tab, obviously, but I think we'll have it aligned. It will be one full holistic work plan. I don't know. I have to go back. As you all know, I'm just like the placeholder till we replace Brett's position, which I know is in process. So we'll decide about that based on what schedule he was using with all of you in the past. And coordinated enrollment also, and Anne, correct me if I'm wrong, has its own work plan. And I'll remind people it's a separate grant. So of course, as you will note in the statement of work, both KPI and coordinated enrollment are alluded to as must be aligned with those work plans, as well as we would like to see alignment with the work that you're doing with your CCR&R partners as well. So more to come on the KPI. I just don't have that worked out yet until I have some more help on what that work plan is going to look like. But our plan is to pull it into the grant.
Will we be able to further refine timelines? This is from Brenda. We'll be able to further refine timelines to include when we'll receive the tools forms to be completed to help us align our staff support in a meaningful way.
Yes, I know people had an interest in saying, well, could we do things 60 days after we receive the stuff from the ELD? We are committed we understand the feedback. We know what you guys are talking about, and we're very committed, and we feel like for once, we're really ahead of the schedule in that we have all of these months. Our plan is to do a lot of work with you all over the spring and summer to develop these tools. This is not something we're doing in a vacuum. We're doing it with you. So there's going to be some different work groups that'll pull on this. And therefore, our plan is that when the grant starts on October 1st, we have all of the pieces in place to get rolling. So that's where we're at. We'll start, of course, with what the work plan looks like and what the regional assessment is going to look like, and go from there.
And then we have another question. Will the school from Begonia, will the school readiness funding from the bridge funding still be available to us?
That's a good question, Begonia. So here's the deal. The pie is not, I'm still working this out with our finance people, but you know, the pie does not change. So any dollars, as you all know, the way our contract works is we're consistently borrowing the July through September money from the next biennium. So my suggestion will be, and I'm not having an official stance on this quite yet, but we're formulating it, which is if you choose to continue funding subcontracts in any of your funding streams over the bridge time, then those are dollars that are going to have to come out of your coordination funding in the next contract, because we have no way to make up those dollars. So it's all the same bucket of money. So my suggestion to people would be, if you're subcontracting dollars over the bridge, to plan on shutting those down on June 30th, or if you choose to continue funding them, understand that those dollars will come off of your total funding in the next contract. So, and like I said, I will send an official memo to this point to all of you, but because we were trying to figure out how's the best way to do it, but it's just an issue of we're always borrowing those dollars from the next biennium, and they're always adjusting what the final total funding is based on how the legislature works out, whether there's cuts, et cetera. So as we all know, the cuts, whether the cut happens or doesn't happen, if it's smaller or bigger, will all affect what that final number looks like. Sorry, Karen, I don't know why I'm not seeing the chat box.
No, it's okay. I'm fine reading. And Bess asked, will this be true for family support funding as well?
Yes, all the streams are going to be affected by this. Now, how the KPI bridge funding is going to be affected is another question, because I know that again, without Brett, I know that a lot of you are running summer programming, so we're going to have to figure out how that's going to work as well. But again, I think in fairness to the whole Hubdom community, basically what's going to happen is if you are expending funds over that bridge period, they're going to come out of your bucket October 1st.
And Dorothy wants you to ask that if you could please clarify that if what you're saying is that the ELD will provide templates, forms, etc., for staffing plan, work plan, budget, and regional system assessment by October 1st.
Yes, unless you don't agree with me, Carmen, that's our plan.
Can I just a quick follow up on that? Because I think what I heard you say at the beginning was the intention is the work plan is also outlining the work that we're going to do that builds to things that are due in the next year of the biennium. If all of that, the goal would be that we're also getting additional clarity, information, boundaries around what those deliverables are for 2023, right. So that we can be intentional about what we put in our work plan as it relates to any future deliverables due.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what will be helpful for you guys to be thinking about is like, what is the thing of all of these that really floats your boat that you want to be part of the template building for? Like, I want to do this. I want to be part of that. So we're going to lean heavily on all of you to really help us to develop what these tools and templates look like moving forward. I think that's an important piece of it. So thank you for the clarified question, Dorothy. Any other, Carmen, or are we ready to go forward?
Kelly, would you mind unmuting and asking your question?
Oh my gosh, I'm rambling in circles. So I'm looking at these work plans and trying to figure out, so the first one is due January 1st, but is that actually the work plan that began back in October 1st of 2021? And is that like the first piece of the 3-year work plan? And then that March date, we update that 3-year plan? I got lost in here. Are these October to September work plans?
Yes.
And
yes.
the March one is so the March 2023 is actually for October of 2023?
Let me try.
But is it, okay. Is
Let me
it
try
fluid,
again.
more fluid? Okay.
So obviously we know that you're not gonna, we don't want you working on things outside of the biennium that we're paying you for, right? So we always give time to address the first work plan. Generally, the first quarter is the time that you would work on your work plan for the whole biennium. Now, understanding that there's going to be a lot of pre-work getting to some of these big deliverables, and you're not going to really know until you get to the down to that strategic plan. You're not going to really know, like, hey, what are we really laying out for the long term here that we want to update? So I think what Carmen and I are thinking is that, and normally the work plan you would update annually and then submit, we would talk through and you would submit the annual work plan. But because there's going to be some significant changes, we decided you needed a little bit longer than annual. So that one that's going to happen in January, which you'll start October 1st, you could start to work on now, even if you wanted to, thinking about that, is the one that's going to lay out all of the work through March 15th of 23. So that'll be your first 14 months of the contract or so. And then including, obviously, what you did behind you don't have to worry about your work planning. So then on March 15th of 2023, we think you're really laying out the second half of the biennium's work plan, even though we're already at March, obviously. And then that will be what takes you into the next biennium that we'll update again when we get to 23-25. So I think we have a full understanding that it's going to really take some time to craft this. And we also think that the work plan that you submit in the first 90 days of the contract is not going to be nearly as detailed or juicy as what's going to come over the next year. Does that make more sense? Okay, good.
I also, I think one thing that we went into our thought here was that we're giving people who don't have a parent council, leadership council in place yet, some time on that so that we can also work to support them in exploring models and getting that into place. And we wanted to make sure that a work plan would come after having your council in place, as well as that regional strategic, so that the parent council would be able to have some input into that, even if they are coming in a little bit later, just to consider that.
So
Thanks.
Carmen, everybody, sorry, this is Virginia. Everybody might be at different stages of evolution. So for the ones that have a parent advisory council in place for a long time, are we gonna get some funding to support them? And for those that are midway, might not be so consolidated, are they gonna get funding and technical assistance? And the ones that are in square one or close, are they gonna get significant funding and technical assistance for the next 2 years, not just like a 1-year funding? So how is this approach of being at different stages, how are you gonna take a look at?
Yeah, so the TA will depend on where you are. I mean, as it does now, right? As everyone is in different places and working on some similar projects and some different things. So TA is always differentiated, but there will be more intensive TA for people who are beginning with who are starting to do more in-depth recruitment and formation for their parent leadership council. The funding is coming out of the funding that you have already seen. It's not an additional set of funding to do this. to do that piece of the work.
It's in the coordination bucket.
It's in the coordination bucket.
So there's no funding whatsoever coming from the federal grant, the $1 million at all.
You're talking about the money that's going to the OPEC hubs, Begonia? Yeah. No, those dollars are designated to the OPEC hubs. So certainly if they want to move some money to you guys, that's okay, but that is for parent education.
Thank you, Denise.
Yep, no problem.
Hey, Denise, but
Yeah.
we are working on some dollars through the PDG grant to help the division and hubs elevate family voice through professional development, both for parents and for leaders. And that would include hubs, hub staff and hub directors as well. So
And that's for the toolkit, correct, Cass, that we're going
that
RFP
would be
process
the
for.
PA
Yeah.
center type approach.
But that won't be funding that goes to the hubs. That's specifically for a project.
Yes. Okay. So it won't be like, but the need will be met, even though they won't get the money directly. There will be that assistance to help them get those, get their councils set up in the various stages that they're at, and look at that through an assessment. So
Great, thank you. Yep, that'll be good. That's a good piece of the TA that we know that we need as well, and the outside support that we need. Thank you.
of course.
Carmen, other things in the chat or people that want to jump in?
There's so many. Yeah, you all are welcome to just unmute and jump in if that's comfortable to you too. I don't mean to imply you need to put things in the chat, but if that's easier, go ahead. So I'm going to read you one more, Denise. From Dorothy, quick question on quarterly reports. Will we have a quarterly report due for July to September timeframe? Will we just use our current template or will there be a new one?
Yeah, you'll just use the current template until we have the new one ready for October 1st. Because I know we're probably going to make significant changes to that report. So there's your first work group. If people want to work on the quarterly report.
And then Denise, can you clarify if the school readiness funding is the only funding stream impacted by the like spending out from that during the summer quarter?
Yes. So for the bridge funds, so all of the funding is affected by the bridge funds, right? So clearly this is going to affect like our coordination dollars. If in any dollars that we spend in that period are directly coming out of our whatever we end up with at the end for 21-23 out of the legislature. So it affects all funding streams. So obviously coordination, there's not going to be a lot you can do about that, but we are going to have to in those other streams. I think in all cases, it will end up correcting what those final numbers are, which is why we're so adamant about saying, you know, all of these numbers are estimates until the session is over and we have calculated what has been spent in the bridge period and what is left over. But it will, I think that the clear way to do it is that it's directly associated to each hub's expenditures. So if you are subcontracting Title 4B, family support, school readiness, KPI, any of those funds, that will be calculated against what your total new amounts are for the 21-23 cycle.
Any other questions about that?
All right, we can go to the next slide. See how many questions that brings up. Okay. So actually, Carmen, before I go over to KPI, where do we want to do we want to do any kind of, we've got 33 minutes left. So anything we want to run through on the statement of work, where people, do we want to look at that together, or what's our thought? People interested in that? Or are you all interested in having us just do a quick review of each section and kind of highlight where we made changes? Would that be helpful? I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second so we can see everybody. So how about like raise a hand? Yes, I want to do, thumbs up, yes, or thumbs down, no, or I don't care.
Denise, could you tell us our options again?
Yes.
What are we voting? What are we voting on?
What are we voting off this island? Okay, so do we want, I guess the question to you guys is, so this is just a quick check on where we are in the timeline of procurement. So we are submitting the grant 1 week from tomorrow to procurement. So what we want to do is we've sent you the updated main body of work. We know there's other little sections we've got to talk about, but we want to know if people would like to go right now and just do a quick review of each section, or is that something you guys feel like you want to do on your own? We will take feedback till the end of this week on that, both either in writing or you calling us or texting or whatever you need to do. So it's just a question of, is it something we want to talk through right now? Or do you just want to do that on your own? Everybody feel strongly either way? We can take probably 10 minutes to review it if that's helpful, or we can leave people to their own. We've kind of gave you the highlights of what we did. 10 minutes for a quick review. Okay. All right. So Carmen, I think I have it here. 1 second. Okay. Just give me 1 second. All right, so just make sure I have the right document here. Good. All righty. Oh goodness, as usual, just too many things are open here. Sure you can all relate. Okay. Here we go. So, Carmen, we can kind of go back and forth on this where it makes sense. But as you can see, as we noted, we had some feedback about the backbone piece being on its own without associated deliverables. So we move that up to the purpose statement. We'll see where that lands once procurement starts looking at it. We still need to add all the definitions, which will come over from the last contract, as well as any new definitions. And then of course we have the equity deliverables that are shared across all contracts. So that'll get added as well too. So now you see the first section is capacity. And here is, we just did some squeezing and combining of the 3 FTE. And then there were some repetitive paragraphs in here about what the skills and attributes were across that staffing. So that's here. The governance and stakeholder engagement piece. We really pulled this together because it feels like it's one big section. And don't get too tied up in what the table format is here. It's really just a placeholder for us because the deliverables kept sliding up and down. So that will all, likely the contract will look a little bit more like what you're used to seeing in paragraph format. So this is really just for ease of viewing. So again, here's where we discuss what the overall governance structure looks like with governance, parent leadership council, and your stewardship council, as well as your other stakeholder engagement. Stuff you recognize about who must be in the structure of governance. The sectors that must be represented. Having a tribal position is still there. A little bit more here about above committees and engagement, really like outlining who should be in those in your overall structure. And then the next section is on the Parent Leadership Council within the governance structure, participating in ongoing technical assistance. Same old language about following public meeting laws, bylaws, submitting your bylaws, updating your bylaws. Now the next piece is, again, this is about the toolkit that Cass alluded to, which will help you in structuring your parent council. And then again, governance training, which we had mentioned before, and got some good feedback from governance members that they like that and actually want to see some training. So that was great. And then the stewardship council, again, shortened here just to talk about the convening of it. And that it aligns to the sector planning toolkit. Anything in the chat box, Carmen, before we move to collaborative community planning?
Yeah, Brenda says there was previous language on firewall policy for backbone organizations. And is that still here somewhere, or is there replacement guidance?
Thank you, Brenda. I'll put that in the governance piece. You know, I don't know what we had exactly from the, that was contractually obligated. It was part of the original RFA, but now that we're moving from a DAS contract to a grant, we need to, thank you very much. We need to get that in there. Appreciate you catching that. We'll get that in there. Okay. Now collaborative community planning. Again, you can see we really shrunk down the regional assessment piece. We'll see. There may be updates, you guys, to this depending on how much flack we get from procurement. We've been able to use this idea of toolkits and templates before, so we can actually do some of this work together. So we'll see. Hopefully that will go through again. This is what we'll be working on with them back and forth. The sector planning, again, just an update to your sector plan. We are aware that we did have the PDG data last time, which we provided. Not everybody was in love with it, but some folks really utilized and needed it. We're going to try and make it better, and we have some money in PDG to actually provide data again, as well as direct and paid for TA with PSU to help with the data work in the assessment. So more to come about that. Now the strategic planning. So again, you see develop and or revise. So don't have to start from fresh if you've already got one. Now here's the annual work plan. There's a lot around this piece because this is really the main deliverable for us. So again, this is not, this first paragraph, not new language that it has to be approved by us, that you work with us to pull it together. That it's number 2, successful implementation, Raise Up Oregon. That's from the last contract as well. Here's families in number 3. All this is previous language, a little bit probably. We've reworked a little bit of the language, but nothing will be a surprise here. Can't change a work plan unless you talk to us about it. Again, all old language. Number 6, this is where we talk about number 5 and number 6, where KPI and coordinated enrollment need to be aligned, as does in number 7, CCR and Rs. And then here's the different sections that Carmen showed you earlier. We reworked and compressed this language on the work you'll be doing with the CCR and Rs. That should be reflected in your work plan and theirs. And through there. Okay, before I go to CQI, any other questions, Carmen?
Bess asks, are the hub rules and indicators still a thing in the work plan, and will new performance measures be developed prior to 1/1/22?
Great question. So no, I think roles and indicators are like the original metrics have gone by the wayside to be replaced by Raise Up Oregon strategies, as well as, yes, performance measures is work we're going to be doing both with Erin Watson, who we have some more hours on her contract, who developed the theory of change. She's going to help us with the performance measures piece. And then we have, again, back to those work groups, we're going to be doing some work with you all too in developing those performance measures and also giving you TA on doing measures for yourself regionally as well. Any other questions there, Carmen? Nope. Okay. And then CQI, which that was a good lead in, Bess. Thank you. Here again is about now the evaluation and the continuous quality improvement, utilizing all of your pieces that you've developed, continuously coordinating, using short cycle feedback loops, etc. And then finally, last two sections, stakeholder communications. This is really about how are we getting information out. It'll just be part of your overall plans. And then budget and financing. We've removed the comprehensive children's budget. And then this is just the same thing as before. There's a budget template. It'll go alongside the work plan updates as well. We'll make updates to that. We're not super stringent. If we had some things last time where people wanted to change their templates, that's fine. We want it to work for you. And then finally, here's the pieces about the 15% expenditures and match. And I guess we need to put something in there about EGMs too. I'll note that. So
yeah,
like
we also, Bess identified a missing piece on our timeline.
Okay.
Will the appreciative evaluative monitoring process be the same? Is the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're gonna have to, I don't think we had, I don't know if we had in the contract last time what the monitoring process was. I would say that we probably have to meet those dates that we have in the past. So you all recall that we would do the first year's monitoring in the spring as an appreciative, again, really a TA visit, which I think makes perfect sense to Carmen and I still. And that year two would be the more, monitoring process for evaluation. I really think in this cycle, we're really looking at TA across both years. We do have to do some type of monitoring, obviously. And I'm thinking we should add that to the timeline. Anna's, I know we have monitoring in there, but not a due date, and it needs to get on the timeline. So I think you should be counting on, again, spring of 22 and 23 for monitoring, 22 again being the very light TA touch, 23 being the monitoring process in preparation for the next contract cycle. Thank you for raising that, Bess.
I was, this is Dorothy. I was thinking about, like, I think across the hub system, there are probably some of us who have a lot of some pieces of this already like in play, right? Like that we're already, I won't say experts, but like, when I think about parent councils and who's done them really well, including like trainings and that kind of thing, I like will immediately call Begonia and talk to them about, their work and all of that. And I think that that's probably similar across all sorts of different components. Where I'm going with this is I'm wondering if there's plans in place for some sort of virtual learning collaborative where we can learn from one another. And I don't love the virtual space and spending a ton of time, but that's what we have, right? That's what we have available. And I really liked the way that OPEC did their fall conference last year, including part of like their thing that they put together was like every parenting hub had to do like a quick little like video or slideshow or something. So I don't know how other people feel about the OPEC fall conference for OPEC hubs, but I don't know if there are some things that maybe we can learn from the way that they approached a full online kind of conference and take some of those learnings towards some sort of learning collaborative, because I just feel like I want to learn from my other hubs some of the pieces they may already have in place. Like I have so many questions about like, what does a really great training plan for a governance council look like? What do those trainings look like? What about a parent council? What do you think? And even if we don't have it figured out, just like being able to learn from one another. Communications, like who really is doing an awesome job of like communicating with partners in a variety of different ways. What does that look like? And I don't know. So I have all of these questions about implementation, and I know I'm not gonna be able to figure it out on my own.
Yeah, so that's exactly one of the things that we're planning is looking at providing opportunities for hubs to highlight work that they're doing that is like a real strength of theirs, where we can share across to those who also want to work on that piece, and provide opportunity and provide space for you to learn exactly what the way that you were just saying, Dorothy. So yeah, there are so many places of strength and like innovation and like creativity that I think that like we definitely recognize that as part of our TA plan. When we're planning this TA, it's not we're not imagining all of it necessarily comes from us, but that we are facilitators of the technical assistance in a lot of places, as opposed to the deliverers of information to you. You all have this expertise. And Cass came back from that OPEC Learning Collaborative with a lot of really positive things to say. And the same as you, Dorothy, was like, hey, like, can we look at this as a model? So yes, my answer, my long answer, that was my long, my short answer is yes.
And I would just say also, like, obviously the ELD put a lot of these elements in there because there's probably things that they've learned from other states or other places outside of the state. So as much as learning from one another is important, I also think that if there's a model or something that someone else has done that you guys are thinking about, even if it's not the same, showing us some of those pieces is important as well, I guess. I don't know that I just made any sense because my 7-year-old's now yelling in the background for me.
Makes sense. Okay, so I'm watching the time, and now we need to talk about the KPI. So let's transfer to over there. I'm just going to pull up my slides again. Okay, so here we go. If it's going to work. So I was hoping that today we were going to actually take some time to actually whip through the KPI statement of work, but we're not there yet. What I can say to all of you is that we met with Sarah this week, and we are not making any major changes to KPI. We need to make some adjustments to make sure that it's updated to the legislative language, but there will not be any ginormous pieces like, we're not going to focus on professional learning. We're not going to focus on transition or anything like that. So I'll send that out to you this week. We'll send out a written thing for written feedback from folks. And then that will also, my plan is to get the final okay from procurement that we will be merging that grant into this grant as a statement of work, which I think really makes sense when you think about the theory of change and developmental milestones, and really KPI is a major piece of that. I also think it works well with your governance and your communities and talking about what work is of a hub and how we're trying to reach the theory of change. So expect to get something from us on that in the next couple of days, and we'll take feedback on that through next week. And then the funds, which there are going to be significant changes in the funding, obviously because of the funding formula. So we'll talk a little bit about that right now. So as you know, KPI funds are around 8.5 million for the biennium, and we are going with the same amounts, again, budgeted amounts. We really don't know until the session is done what that's going to look like, and as well as whether there will be any changes. I mean, again, we know that can change, can be cut in half, it could be added to, it could be current service levels, which, you know, I was looking in a magic ball trying to figure out what that amount of money would be, if there were current service levels and how we might allocate that. But there's just no information on that to this point. So we'll work from what we know, which is 8.5 for 21-23. We are applying the new data proxies as agreed. So those 3 proxies are going to be applied to this formula as well, which definitely shifts the dollars. When we looked at the shifting, we made the decision internally again, based on the original recommendations of our funding formula work group, that we did not want folks to lose more than 20%. So we moved some dollars, close to about $500,000 off of the 8.5 million, and shifted that to make some adjustments to the funding. So we'll have a look at that. Just to remind you, here's the data proxies we used and what your numbers look like, so you can see those. And then finally, let's shift to the funding piece. I will send you the spreadsheet after this meeting that has the clear thing that you can look at, because I know everyone's going to go right to their number. So let me just highlight some pieces for you. You can see that almost all hubs, except for, I believe, 3, have some kind of percentage loss on their funding. And again, this is from the shifting numbers of the 3 data proxies. So this is a course correctment year for this, because we did want to decrease the amount of shifting so that some were not losing in the 30% range. We tried to get under 20%. So most everyone is between a 14 and a 17% range. Frontier's number looks a little bit higher, but it's because they're dealing with such a small amount of funding anyway. So you can look, these columns show what the current allocation is in green, and then the next one over is the 21-23, and then what the difference is in the percentage difference. So I'll send you the spreadsheet so you have it. Again, I remind you that these numbers can change. This is completely a draft based on using the funding formula proxy and the idea of reallocating some dollars to keep those percentage losses down in this first 2 years. And then we'll see what happens if we get current service level increases, or what happens with the legislative session.
Sorry if I missed this, Denise. Did you say it's based on 8.5 because you're being conservative, or because that's what's in the GRB? I thought the GRB was CSL. It's
yes.
not?
Yep. So we're being conservative.
Okay.
So, and I did ask finance, because I was like trying to get, I want that number, because maybe I can just allocate that. So they're like, no, we're not gonna, we want you to work with the 8.5 you've got. It's the number we know, even though we know that can change too. But you know, these accountants, they're very conservative. What can we do? So we'll see how that affects it. But I wanted people, I know you're thinking about budgeting, planning for, we wanted you to be thinking about this, and in what it means for those bridge times as well. Anything in the chat, Carmen? Oh, everybody's just doing the shock and awe. I know it's the first time you've seen it. Like I said, we'll send it out so you can spend some time thinking about it. We will take feedback on all these pieces. And I just want to say, we felt very, and I think you all agreed, we got the feedback from the almost 200 people that we spoke to last week, that people felt very strongly that the formula was the right formula, and that we understood that there would be changes because of the formula. So we felt the same way with this one. This seemed, you can see now what the base really does for overall funding with the rest of the dollars. When it's just a direct population allocation, it certainly changes. It changes things, but we wanted to honor and keep the formula we had all agreed to previously for equity. So that's where we're at on this piece. And if there's no questions, I'll just remind people again of the timelines. So feedback, please, this week, particularly on the overall statement of work. So what you haven't seen yet is what's going to happen to Title 4B and family support. I don't expect that we have long or large, anything really is going to change in that. We're making sure that it's aligned with what DHS has in their 5-year federal plan. but expect that those will be fairly similar. It'll be the same kind of things that you can be working on and working towards, as well as what's going to happen with KPI. And so if there's anything, like I said, if there's anything significant, I will let you know, but we do not expect or have not heard that there'll be any major changes. So we'll send all that out to you in writing this week, and I will highlight any changes. And we'd ask for feedback on those elements no later than Monday of next week. So we are ready to go and get this into procurement on time, so we do not end up in a similar boat of last year with ratification. That will never happen again. So I just want to assure people we are going to get the grant out on time.
Hey, Denise, I had a question. It's actually reiterating a question that Brenda had asked in the chat box earlier, which is ODE has a process for districts and ESDs to put forward a carryover plan into the summer using their current biennium funding.
Yeah.
Is that an option with school readiness this year? Is that something we could explore? Just thinking about as a mechanism to not borrow our KPI from 20 through 21, 23, but just extending those school readiness dollars through end of August, maybe.
Right. So that's a good question. I don't know what's allowable there. Because of, I mean, the reason that we've been able to carry KPI over that 3-month period without having the biennium borrow is because of, because of what ODE does. So I don't know, Bess. I'll have to look into that question and let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this would be the year to do it, just because I think, because our programming was so limited this year because of COVID.
Yep.
I know I have a surplus to spend, and so I can certainly do it. It's just if I could extend it into the summer and not pull from next year's KPI, that would be that would be amazing.
Yeah, it's how we it comes down to that question of what are they. I mean, I know my initial reaction based on my relationship with Lois is that you cannot pre-spend money on the next biennium, right? I mean, we can be creative in how we do some of that work, certainly, but I just don't know what we can do. Now, if we're allowed to do it with ODE funds, like why can't we if those are different biennial dollars? And I'm certainly happy to talk to anyone about how we can get creative around some of those pieces to make that work for if you are sitting on school readiness and KPI. And it does just bring up a thought I want to mention to you. I have a meeting tomorrow or Thursday with PSU. PSU is going to want to convene some time with all of you to talk about how you are utilizing and what kind of pivots and shifts you've made in COVID. In considering, we're just interested in gathering some of that data. They are, as are we. So more to come on that as well.
All right, our chat box has some echoing of, having leftover KPI or still having KPI money to spend out.
Yes.
Needing to get creative with that. And Brenda has a question, says that her legal office is asking if we will see the draft contract language beyond scope of work prior to procurement review.
Sure, we can. What we will do is when we submit that, when we submit the grant to procurement on the 10th, I will send it to all of you as well, so you can see what goes to them, and then it'll be the constant reminder that it's all up to their review at this point. I mean, we made a lot of the significant changes that Carmen and I did because of the feedback that we received, but also because I had already been getting signaled that a lot of the language was too fluffy and not, the who, what, when, where, and why. So we're hoping that we hit it right. But again, no problem, Brenda, no problem to anybody doing that to start to prepare, but to be thinking about things could change and how it's outlined. And then, okay. Francis, I'm just looking at your comment. I can't get my, here we go.
And we'll send out the slides from this today. And if people can just take one last look at that deliverables slide and make sure that that timelining makes sense is in line with how you would do the work. If that request makes sense, sorry.
Yes. And then, Carmen, I think just a preview to April for the April meeting. So in April, we celebrate that our grant is on its way. Hopefully that we're making more progress in the legislature. And then is that when we're going to talk with a little bit with Valeria? Was that our plan?
So we're letting you know now so we can start making adjustments to schedules that we are gonna need to move that meeting to a 12:30 start on the first Tuesday in April. Valeria Atanasio, our tribal affairs manager, is gonna come and just introduce herself to people and reintroduce to those of you who've met and talk about her role, which is new. And she is going to talk to us about the tribal hub, the timeline and the work that's going on with that, and give you some more information about that. And her availability is earlier than what we normally have. So I'll send out an invite on that for 12:30. And she'll also be then coming to our equity COP community of practice later in April to have some conversation with us along with CCR and our leadership.
Super. And if people, I'm trying to think too, when it fits into, I think as we mentioned to you in the first feedback session, we have an interest in tying Valeria a lot more closely to our work, as well as Kimberly Moa with the Equity Fund as well, so that we're on the same page together. So I think we can probably expect to have Kimberly start joining us at these meetings as well. All right, with that, you guys, just double check here, make sure we didn't miss anything in the chat. Oh, coordinate enrollment, estimates, and
Yes, noted. Thank you.
On that note, do we know when our funds are going to show up in EGMs for this year?
We are trying to get to the bottom of that. Yeah, I know that's affecting all of you. And I keep hearing soon, so I'll keep nudging.
Great.
More than nudging.
Thank
I
you.
can just send my fiscal person after whoever at the ELD. Denise knows her. If you need a push from someone on the outside, she will happily give it to whoever.
Thanks, Dorothy. All right, everybody. Well, as always, such a joy to be with you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll be back in contact via the internet over the next week or so. So have a great day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.